Yes, of course, I'll do exactly as you ask. My manager accused me of bullying, so I asked them to punish me. Years ago, I worked in a semi-government organization as part of a successful team helping local businesses. Our boss left for the private sector and they hired a new manager from a fancy outfit in another region. She worked a compressed schedule Monday through Thursday, with Fridays off. After a couple of months, despite being detail-obsessed and already souring relationships with several coworkers by nitpicking their work, she and I personally hadn't had any issues. During one staff meeting, though, she announced we weren't being efficient enough. Reality check, we were probably the best in the country. She said she wanted to be more involved to raise quality and ordered us to forward all client emails to her so she could sprinkle comments before we replied. Everyone thought the plan was a productivity black hole, but no one argued. I just asked, what about clients who email us on Fridays? Should I wait until Monday to answer? I don't remember her exact reply, but after the meeting she asked me to stay behind. With a prickly tone, she claimed my question was an act of bullying, said it was unprofessional to ask in front of others, and warned HR might see it as grounds for yeeting me out the door. She told me to be very careful in the future. I said I understood. We went back to our desks, and I immediately wrote a detailed report of our chat and sent it to the HR director. In it, I dramatically explained that since bullying had allegedly occurred, it was serious. Victims might not always speak up, so I felt duty-bound to report myself. I even hammed it up, claimed I was shocked by my own terrible behavior, my career was in danger, and I urgently needed retraining. I CC'd the union rep for good measure. The very next day, the three of us, me, the union rep, and the manager, were sitting with the HR director. The director, a rules gremlin of the highest order, couldn't find a single sign of harassment or reason for discipline. They asked me to step out while they talked. I don't know what was said, but 6 weeks later the manager was gone. That same week, my higher-up, a soft-spoken but nice fellow, invited me in and thanked me. He'd wanted to get rid of her for ages, but hadn't known how. You don't even sound like you're sick. Back in the day, I worked as an analyst at a call center handling inbound calls. I really liked that job. At first, the company was amazing. But after about 4 years, a giant international megacorp bought it out. Classic scheme: buy a profitable business, squeeze every last pancake out of it, slash costs, tank quality, make a pile of shiny coins until the reputation gets completely yeeted, then sell the leftovers and bounce. Within just a few weeks, the place went from being an awesome workplace to another gloomy, stressful cubicle farm where the bosses wrung every drop out of their staff. Here's one example. They chopped bonuses so badly that for 3 days of work, instead of a sweet $1,000, you could only get a $50 gift card to Boston Pies. Yes, spelled like that. Before, bonuses went to everyone and scaled with performance. Now just one lucky bean got it. And the bosses still had the cheek to be mad that nobody was motivated by this upgrade. I was good at my job, not to brag, and I was easily the most productive person on the floor. We had 15 paid days off a year. The contract and handbook clearly said we could use them for sick days, mental recharge, or personal errands. No explanations needed. Just take a day off if you wanted. I always made sure to use every single one by year's end. They didn't roll over, and the old leadership even encouraged us to take them. No non-burn bonus existed. I always gave notice in advance. Only once did I take a spontaneous day off because I was legit feeling like a microwave potato. When new management arrived, though, they started hassling people for using their paid leave. I heard stories from coworkers about being grilled over the phone. Why? What happened? You don't sound sick. It turned into pure pressure and scare tactics. Then my turn came. I called to say I wouldn't come in the next day. When asked why, I said I felt unwell and immediately got a frosty, but you don't sound sick. Me, being a smart cookie, replied, even doctors don't diagnose over the phone, but they wouldn't drop it. Maybe you can come in later. Your voice is fine. You've already taken more sick days than others. I was getting tired of being treated like a villain just for following the rules, so I installed a call recording app on my phone for just-in-case purposes. I live in a region where it's perfectly legal to record calls as long as one party, aka me, agrees. Next time I felt under the weather, I rang work. They always started with, "Thank you for calling XX. Please note this call may be recorded for quality control." I said hello, gave my name, and added, "By the way, just so you know, on my side this call may also be recorded for quality sprinkles," because, spoiler, I was totally recording. I figured it was fair to warn them. The supervisor snickered. "So why are you calling? You don't sound sick. I'll mark you as out until noon, then come in." I replied, "Nope, I'm taking at least a full day. I'll update you if I'm still feeling like a soggy waffle. She said, nah, I'm only approving half a day. Call back if you get worse. I repeated myself, stayed firm, and said that was final. She got salty and started hinting I might lose my job. Why are you taking so many days off? More than anyone else. I answered, I'm taking exactly what my contract allows. No more, no less. She snapped, well, you clearly lack team spirit. We'll have to discuss this with HR. The tone was straight up corporate goblin intimidation. The next day, I stayed home and then came in for my shift. The moment I arrived, they told me, go see HR. I sat down with Art from HR, basically a corporate sidekick. He launched into a speech about how they'd need to review my contract and decide whether I was a good fit for the future of company XXX. In case you're wondering why I stayed so calm, yeah, I wanted to keep my job at XX, but honestly, I wouldn't have given a fluffy marshmallow if they'd fired me. I was good at what I did, and I'd already gotten offers from competitors. So there you'll be jobless scare didn't work on me. While Art was lecturing me, I casually pulled out my phone and played the recording of my call where I clearly said I was taking a sick day. Art froze mid-sentence, his face turning the color of overcooked spaghetti. He got a bit cranky, then realized he was listening to his supervisor bossing around an employee and trampling both the law and contract rights. He mumbled an apology and scurried out of the room. About 10 minutes later, he returned, still red, but trying hard to act composed. He switched tactics and claimed I had broken the law by making an illegal recording. I calmly explained that, as a professional analyst, I'd done my homework. In our region, only one party needs to give the thumbs up for recording. That party was me. Art tried again. He said the recording didn't count because the supervisor allegedly thought I was joking. I answered, nope, I wasn't joking. If she thought that, she was wrong, and that's not my circus. I reminded him I'd told her the truth. The law was on my side, and the recording was perfectly valid evidence. Art stormed out once more and came back looking like a tomato that had lost an argument. He muttered, you can go back to your desk. I did just that. From that on, nobody ever gave me grief about taking my days off. Every call I made after that was super polite and professional. The vibe was still a bit frosty, but honestly, that was way better than the old scary boss routine. My boss ignored my experience and got a classic lesson. You reap what you sow. I worked for a private company of around 250 employees helping people with special needs, both cognitive and physical. We had day centers and group homes. Previously, I'd done the same work for the government, then moved to the IT department until management hit peak nonsense. But that's a whole other saga. Before that, I worked in EMS, and before that, I served in the Army. So yeah, I know how to cover my butt. My boss sent an email to all staff and called a mandatory in-person meeting because of a report I wrote. Client returned from a walk showing signs of sunburn, disorientation, and dehydration. Staff noted client fainted, likely heat stroke, reported to nurse and state agency as possible negligence. The nurse didn't check it until a week later after the inspectors came, but she agreed with me. Heat stroke confirmed. 9 days later, we're called to an emergency meeting. Boss hands out a paper. Employees aren't allowed to act outside their job description. And you're not doctors. Throughout, she's staring me down and singles me out by name. Fine, you want me to only follow my literal job description? Say no more. I stopped doing anything beyond that narrow scope. 2 months pass. One day, I get a call from the main office in San Antonio. Computers are down. I live over an hour away. Normally, I'd handle this instantly. I was one of the first hires and had the experience. My boss calls on my day off, asking me to come in. I say, per your memo, I'm not allowed to work outside my duties, hang up, and shut off the phone until dinner. 10 minutes later, the owner calls. Always polite before, but now, when will you start working? Payroll depends on it. You want to get paid tomorrow, right? Move your butt. Maybe not the smartest move, telling the guy who fixes your tech stuff for free to move your butt. I cited my boss's memo and policy, then added, IT issues aren't my job. Payroll is yours by law. Hung up, phone off for 2 days. In that time, 3 employees quit over unpaid wages. At 6 p.m., threats of termination flew, and the owner personally visited. He tried explaining that over 5 years, my responsibilities had expanded. I said, my pay hasn't changed a cent. IT work was volunteer charity, not in my contract. The respect I got recently isn't payment. I even added, I know IT rates from a few hundred to thousands, $200 an hour on average. Fixing their system would take 3 hours. Owner offered 50 cents extra per hour and pay for 3 overtime hours. I countered, public apology from the boss, $3 per hour raise, and exemption from the no weapons policy, since he routinely broke it himself. They refused. I told them I'd handle my direct duties with clients and they could find an IT company later. The system was a mess. Nurses couldn't record notes, no one could log hours, paper records couldn't be sent. It took them 4 days, countless calls, and 8 more staff resignations to finally agree to my terms. 3 times they tried to remove the clause about concealed weapons, which I never brought to work anyway. The hypocrisy was maddening. I'd rather refuse the raise than back down on that point. In the end, the owner's wife accidentally deleted a critical file she shouldn't have touched. Using my old backup on an ancient hard drive, it took exactly 8 minutes to restore. Oh, you're upset I didn't show up 15 minutes early? Fine, I'll show you just how early I can be. I work as a dealer at a casino. Here we've got a simple rule, first in, first out. If you start at 7 p.m., you get to leave before anyone who started at 8 as soon as tables start closing. Totally normal practice. If several people start at the same time, leaving order follows a rotation. First this week, second next week, and so on. One afternoon, I showed up for my shift alongside 2 other dealers. All of us were scheduled for the same start time. I was happy because I was first in the rotation, which meant I'd get to leave early, and I had plans later that night. I walked into the pit 10 minutes before start and noticed one of the other dealers already slinging cards. Apparently, she'd been lounging in the break room, and the supervisor asked her to start 15 minutes early. I asked the supervisor about it. Yeah, she started 15 minutes before you, so she's first to leave. 6 hours later, tables started closing. I was excited to clock out, when suddenly I saw that same dealer heading home, grinning like she'd just unlocked secret loot. I protested. I should leave before her. She smirked. Well, I started earlier, so I'm out first. Then she pranced off. I was steaming. Complained to the supervisor. He shrugged. That's policy. Whoever starts first, leaves first. Okay, fine. Let's play by your rules. I knew this coworker had kids and relied on her mom for babysitting, so she couldn't always arrive early. Meanwhile, I had no obligations, so I began arriving 2 hours before my shift and chilling in the break room. Every time, I told the supervisor I was there and free to start if needed, and guess what? They always needed me, because if a dealer is present, they'll open a table. For 3 straight weeks, I held the first leave slot every single shift. That dealer started grumbling and complaining. Late departures were draining her energy. One night, as I once again headed home early, she sighed, "Would be nice if I could leave before close just once." I said, "Just follow policy. Come in early if you want to be first." 2 weeks later, after many of her complaints, management changed the rules. Now you had to arrive at least an hour early to jump the line. 15 minutes didn't cut it anymore. Hopefully it was worth it. She spent over a month stuck until closing, all because of that one smug grin. And yes, I was a petty gremlin with too much free time. Yep, I came in 2 hours early, but I got paid for almost all of it because they'd always put me on a table once I showed up. I even earned more than usual. The gap between first and last out could be several hours. Early birds often left by 9-10 p.m., while the others stayed until 2-3 a.m., depending on how busy it was. And to be fair, this coworker was tricky overall. She clashed with nearly everyone and quoted rules only when it benefited her. If she'd truly needed to leave early, say for kid-related stuff, I'd have happily let her go first. But her smug, "I started earlier so I leave first" vibe, that's what made me go full strategic pancake. Don't like the way I park? Fine, I'll follow the rules to the letter. A couple of months ago, I had a run-in with the self-appointed neighborhood sheriff. Let's call her Linda. For context, we don't live in a fancy HOA community, but Linda struts around like she's president of the Law and Order Committee. She leaves passive-aggressive notes on people's windshields, bangs on doors to complain about grass height, and calls City Hall about violations that don't even exist. It all started when I parked my car on the street in front of my own house. Totally legal. Something I'd been doing for years without bothering anyone. Suddenly, Linda decided my car ruined the aesthetic of the neighborhood. One day I found a note tucked under my wiper. "This is not a parking spot. Put your car in your driveway like a respectable citizen. Don't make me call the mayor's squad." I was mildly annoyed, but shrugged it off and kept parking as usual. That wasn't enough for Linda. She showed up at my door. "I've told you, parking on the street is rude. You have a driveway. Use it." I said, "I'm not breaking any law or blocking anyone." She huffed, "It still ruins the view. Park in your driveway or I'll report you." "Okay, Linda, have it your way." Here's the catch. My driveway is tiny. If I pull my car in, I block the sidewalk, which is against city code. You're not allowed to block the pedestrian zone. So the next day, I carefully parked smack in the middle of my driveway, perfectly blocking the sidewalk. Linda didn't take long to appear, mad as a spicy pepper. "You can't block the sidewalk. That's illegal." I replied, "Oh, I thought you wanted me off the street, Linda." "Not like this. Park properly," she barked. "Can't do it any other way." guess I'll go back to the street. You should have seen her face. She grumbled a bit more and left. I resumed street parking. But Linda wasn't done. She actually filed a complaint with City Hall. A week later, a city inspector showed up, checked everything, and confirmed I was 100% legal. He also mentioned Linda had sent so many bogus complaints that the staff was exhausted from dealing with her. For a while, Linda stayed quiet, until the other day when she parked her own car right in front of my house. So, being a model neighbor, I called the city. Turns out her car was too close to a fire hydrant. She got a ticket, and yes, it was deliciously satisfying. Our professor insisted we stick to the schedule, so we did exactly what he wanted. This happened last year. Looking back, I feel a bit sorry for the guy. He wasn't the worst professor I've had, and the university itself was going through a rough patch, launching a totally untested program. On the other hand, I was paying a boatload of cash for that education, and the man behaved like a high-level snooty pants. So, It was a history course with a group assignment. Give a presentation in front of the whole class. Seminars were 3 hours long. The last hour was for 2 presentations, each 30 minutes, followed by a Q&A session, probably to keep us on our toes. The professor made it crystal clear. Pick your topic and week early. That's it. Miss your slot, you get a big ol' 0. At first, that sounded fair, though I didn't love his bossy tone. Luckily, I got an awesome team. Easygoing folks, fun to work with. We picked a convenient week, rehearsed like champs, timed ourselves with a stopwatch, even invited outsiders to throw tricky questions at us. Everything was perfect. But by week 5, a scary pattern had emerged. Weeks 2, 3, and 4 had the same problem. Despite his discipline speech, the first group always went way over time, forcing the second group to cram into 20 minutes. Panic was visible on their faces. As our turn approached, my teammates were getting twitchy. What if all our planning got yeeted into the void? I decided to try one last thing. Worst case, he'd just say no, right? Before class, I politely asked if we could present first, since we were sure we'd stay within 30 minutes. He proceeded to give me a public roast session. His voice stayed calm, but the lectern was right by the entrance, so people were walking in while he scolded me, calling it a silly question and telling you to sit down. I shrank into my chair, steamed like a kettle, and spent 2 hours trying not to explode. Of course, the other group went first, and shocker, they ran over time. We kept shooting the professor worried looks, but he was too busy nodding along. At the 50-minute mark, they finally wrapped up. My group sat frozen in full-on nightmare mode. Then Professor Snooty clapped politely and said, "Well, I guess we'll finish early today." It was straight out of a courtroom drama. The 4 of us shot up in unison and started protesting. What the fudge muffins was happening? He couldn't hear us well from the back since we were all talking at once, so he asked, "What's going on?" I zipped down the stairs like King Kong with a latte, and right by the doorway where students were filing out, I reminded him this was our scheduled day. We were ready. He looked totally stunned. Turns out he'd forgotten we were supposed to present, which explained why he'd snapped earlier. I told him, either we present right now to an empty room, or you give us 100 points. The poor dude tried to wriggle out of it, claiming we hadn't signed up. We had. Suggesting next week, impossible. 2 teammates had teaching practicums, and saying he had a meeting. Not my circus pal. Finally, he caved. Made a call, probably canceled that meeting, and stood there pale as chalk, processing life choices. I'll never forget that face. So we presented to an almost empty hall, just the professor and 2 students who apparently wanted to watch the drama. We crushed it and scored an A+. Thanks for watching. Drop your stories of deliberate employee defiance in the comments, and don't forget to check out our other stories. See you next time.